right, Zach. Well, thank you for hopping on to talk some wrestling. And we're going to close the show out by talking some lacrosse. And we're going to bring in our lacrosse experts here, Christian Gardecki and Connor Keogh. And guys, it was a disappointing weekend for the Hofstra Pride facing UNC. UNC ultimately wins 21-9. But Christian, you were here with me in the postgame for that North Carolina game, and Coach Tierney said regardless of what happened, he made a commitment to the team that there was going to be a scouting report in their locker, and I'm quoting him directly, there's going to be a scouting report for Fairfield in their locker room, win or lose, and CAA play opens up on the road in our home state, Christian.
Yeah, tomorrow, Hofstra versus Fairfield, and they've had this game circled on their calendar since last year, because that's a game they should have won a year ago. It was a one-goal game. Really, for Hofstra, if you win this game versus Fairfield, basically, and you do what you can do the rest of the year, you're in the CAA tournament. This is really a playoff game in week one of the conference schedule for the Hofstra Pride. You look at the UNC game, yeah, it's UNC. It is what it is. Very, very good team, top 20 for a reason. And Coach Tierney gave them all the credit. And honestly, it was one of the most positives I've seen Coach Tierney in a post-game press conference in a long time.
The way Coach Tierney phrases it is the team is now 0-0 record. Everything from the pre-conference games means nothing. This is the game that we have circled. This is what he says, quote, a playoff game, because if we win this, if Hofstra wins this and do what they can do, they should probably end up around 5-2 and be a 3 seed in the CAA.
I really see the only losses they get this year is probably to Duke at this point. And not Duke, Delaware, team of the D.
Towson.
And Towson, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you guys, because this Fairfield game, you referenced, and I'm glad that you referenced the aspect from last year with that game, but we look 2 weeks from now, Delaware. Delaware, obviously the class of this conference. So how important is this Fairfield game for setting the tone? Because I think for Hofstra, you don't want to get into the situation like you did last year of leaving stuff on the table. And there were a couple of games last year where Hofstra left things on the table. The chief among those was that Fairfield game on March 16th.
Even the Towson game at the end of the year as well. I mean, Towson, even though they're right outside the rink, you can beat them as well. Delaware's team as well. But when you look at this Fairfield game, yes, this sets everything up. And if you can carry some momentum into the Delaware game from the Fairfield game, then it could be very good. Now, keep in mind, that game against Delaware is on the road. These next two games are on the road, and then they come back here at the end of the month against Monmouth. So, really, I think Hofstra should get the win this weekend. Next weekend, contend for a win. I mean, Delaware is a beatable team. Every team's a beatable team. But contend for the win.
I agree with Christian on this. I was going to say, Delaware is currently ranked around number 18, so just inside the top 20, and they're 0-2 against ranked opponents this year. So I'm not saying that they're a fraudulently ranked team, but Delaware is a team that relies on J.P. Ward and Mike Robinson for the most part. They don't have a lot of depth scoring. If the Pride can shut them down, Hofstra does have a chance to win against Delaware.
And very quickly, I do want to mention Hofstra did hang around with number 16 Rutgers a couple weekends ago, a 13-8 game, so that's something to mention about that.
Well, you mentioned the rankings, though. I mean, if they lose the other ranked teams, think about this. 1 through 5 is up here, then, 15 through 18 is way down here. So it's really different when you look at that. Delaware's a team that, will contend for the CAA title. We know that. But looking at it again at this week, this game, everybody is ready for. When you look at the members of the Hofstra Pride, and when you see them around campus, they look focused no matter what, because this is a game that can make or break their season. And it really was, I guess, the encapsulation of last season in some sort of sense, Jack.
I mean, when you have a situation where you lose to Stony Brook on the last day of the season,
and Towson 2 weeks before,
in the manner in which they did, you mentioned this as a make or break game for the Hofstra Pride. All you have to do is go look at that very winnable game against Fairfield on March 18th as something that played a factor in why you were not in the CAA tournament in 2023, and Stony Brook was.
Well, let's forecast this schedule right now, if we can. I'll ask you guys around. Fairfield should be a win, right?
Winnable game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Delaware, close game. I think it's going to be closer than people expect.
I think very similarly played to the way that they played against Rutgers. And, Rutgers was a game that could have been a lot closer. I don't know that Hofstra, you could say they would have won, but I think it's going to be very similarly played how they played against Rutgers.
Monmouth, winnable game.
Winnable game.
Absolutely. They won it last year. I think they'll win it again.
Towson at Towson. Now, this one is interesting because of the fact that, they are right outside the top 20, but they played really close with them last year.
Yeah,
we also have to forecast that Towson just hosted Virginia and only number 4 Virginia and only lost by 4 goals.
Yeah.
They are a very scary team that might honestly be better than Delaware.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's going to be close. I think Drexel should be a Hofstra game.
Drexel win.
Yale's out of conference. That's a tough one no matter what. Hampton, easy win by like 15 goals.
Yeah,
sorry.
And then you're going to be in a situation where you're playing Stony Brook once again.
At
on
Stony
the end
Brook.
So we said, okay, let's go through this. So we said Fairfield win. I think we came to the consensus Delaware lost. So Fairfield win, Monmouth win, Drexel win, Hampton win. That's 4 wins in conference play.
And then it's a toss-up with those other 2 games.
Yeah, it's a toss-up. So let's just say worst case scenario, Hofstra's 4-2 going into the season finale against Stony Brook.
That should be enough.
Yeah, that should be enough. When you think about it, it's probably going to be Hofstra, Stony Brook, Delaware, and Towson as the 4 teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, because Christian, I go back to you and I talking on February 2nd on the Spring Sports Preview Show. I was very confident in the lead up to that show, and I said it on air for that show that I thought that I think, and I still do think this team is a CAA tournament team.
I think they're a CAA tournament team, but I think they're the 4 seed in my opinion. I don't see them being a 2 or a 3 or even a 1, obviously. I think they're probably the 4 team. If they beat Stony Brook in that last game, should everything go right as we expect it, then they could be a 3 or a 2. That's how close it was last year on the last day. Hofstra could have won that last game and gotten up to the 3 seed last year in the last game.
I honestly think Hofstra is probably the 3 seed. I think last year the guys know they remember what happened with Stony Brook.
1 goal.
I understand the defense is very young. Blake Cooling is a sophomore. Will Delaney's a sophomore. Henry Troy's a redshirt freshman, but I'm liking what's gelling. They are obviously a tough showing against North Carolina, but the defense has been clamping, and I think against CAA opponents other than Delaware and Towson, they can put up a strong showing and be a 3 seed.
So before we move on to women's lacrosse, Christian, your final thoughts going into the start of conference play?
Well, I just want to back off your thing real quick. Coach Tierney's been very high in the defense early on this year. You know, we kind of knew there was gonna be a problem with it this year with a lot of those guys gone. My final take is Hofstra needs to win this game. That's obviously the easy thing. If they get the win, they're in the CAA tournament, in my opinion.